Hi student, it's Kate here. Come back to problem 6.24, part 2. So in this part, the requirement is we have to prepare the manufacturing overhead budget. And you know that manufacturing overhead budget includes fixed overhead and variable overhead. And different from direct cost, which can be traced directly to the cost object, the manufacturing overhead must be allocated. And we need to find the allocation base or the cost driver for the cost. So for variable overhead, the yellow box is the data that provided in the text in the question. And what we have to do now is to calculate the variable overhead rate. So as the question says, the variable overhead is allocated based on the budgeted production. So first we will take the budgeted production figures from part 1C, and then we know that the total variable overhead cost is 481,200 and it's allocated based on the number of kinds that we produce. So we simply take total variable overhead cost divided by the budgeted production, and we have what we had is $6 variable overhead per kind. So that is just an estimated cost. Come to the fixed overhead. After add up all of the fixed overhead items, we have the total fixed overhead. Now the fixed overhead is allocated based on the labor hours, the direct labor hours. And where do we get these figures? We have to come back to the budgeted direct labor hours that we got in part 1E, which is this amount. And now we simply take the total fixed overhead and divide it by the total direct labor hours. And so we have $20 per direct labor hours. But be careful, that is not direct fixed overhead per kind, because one kind we only takes 0.6 hours to produce one kind. So if you look at here, the direct labor hours, assembly takes 0.5 and packing takes 0.1 hours. So that is not 1 hour. So in order to know how much of the fixed overhead cost per kind, we have to times that with the direct labor hours per kind. So we get 0.5 and plus 0.1, and then we times 20 here. So we have $12 fixed overhead per kind. Okay, so now based on what we have produced, we can calculate the total manufacturing overhead per kind. The variable overhead per kind is 6 and fixed overhead per kind is 12. So total manufacturing overhead per kind, you take the sum of these two figures. All right, now we have to calculate the budgeted manufacturing overhead overall. So we have to take the budgeted production, which is from here, and then we take the manufacturing overhead per kinds, and then we times the total of kind that we produce. So that's it for the budgeted manufacturing overhead. Now we calculate the ending inventories budget. Remember that inventory will include the direct materials or the raw materials and the finished goods, and sometimes also include the work in progress as well. But in this case, we only have the direct materials and the finished goods. So first we calculate the budgeted ending finished goods. In order to do that, we have to know how much of the total cost per kind. First, the direct materials cost per kind is the sum of the direct material cost here. Okay, direct labor cost will be the sum of here, direct labor cost per kind, and the manufacturing overhead we just calculated, which is 18. So here we just need to take the total of these three figures to have the total unit cost, 51.5. And how much kinds we have at the end of the period. So come back to the green box, and it is the finished good in units, 2,200. And how much will be the value of that? You take cost per kind and you time the total number of kinds. Now the budgeted ending direct materials. That is quite easy because in the green box they already says that. So you see that the direct materials dollars value target ending, you take the sum of these three. Okay, so if you want to calculate the total inventory, ending inventory, then you take the value of finished good and you plus the value of direct materials. Okay, so in the next video we will do the last requirement of this part, which prepare the cost of sales budget. Thank you for listening.